What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sleep Atomic, where I review some greats for some of the tastiest little tidbits. Generally, I go in and try to dive in and see the deeper meanings and messages that some people wouldn't have just picked up or picked out. Of course, we always feel something happening in the chest there, but maybe it wiped some cobwebs out or have some tingling in your extremities. But here is where I really articulate those things. So pay attention. Maybe it spoke to your soul or something that happened to you that day. You know, that day. Whatever you're still reveling about or dwelling on, we lay that bare or equipped it for the further folly or growth. Among these moments, which will be The Last of Us, Episode 7, Left Behind, for that monster being that's in your head, that's your mind, thoughts, feelings, etc. But only going on the trailer from the Episode 6 of what's going to happen next week, I just wanted to point out it must be nice for them to have another child for Bella Ramsey. I'm sure she was not a handful or anything. Probably quite the opposite and almost too good. So they probably had a very nice collected day for this episode with another young person. A lot of people forgetting that she's still just a person under 18, underage, hanging out with a bunch of old people. There's the look that they were trying to portray for the character, each of the adults in this episode, but you could almost tell that they did this all in like one grouping instead of like chopping it up. Most good-hearted adults will like see a good play date between two people while they're working, so, and especially now that they've been on the silver screen, it's probably a nice supervised way to have a friend, or make friends. I'm sure somehow, some way that they've noticed each other from afar, and it's like, oh, like, I always wanted to work with you, and then go do something very usual, like sit around and look at their phones. I'm sure while they're like talking about the script and being in the same industry. But even if I'm just projecting, it does seem like they had fun. And even though the tone of the episode is supposed to be the opposite, just going off the title there. But there is a mention of a mall and a merry-go-round, so you can't not have fun around those places. But as you see or saw, I wanted to excitedly mention before I forgot or just went to something else before it not connecting to anything I was saying. This is a very good POV point of view episode. This would be the cinematic equivalent of first person or even third person, definitely third person, in the video games. And especially how there's only like 6 characters. There's Bethany, Quan, Ellie, Joel, and Riley, and then you definitely always count the dead guy, even though he was only corpse number 3 or whatever. Even though it was only pills and alcohol, there was a story and there was a character. But hey, I don't knock it because I know I would probably be one of those people who say, hey, I was in it, like, see, look. I'm pointing out one of the extras or something like that. I'm sure there are plenty of actors. There's like the people in the gym when Bethany like started that confrontation, and then the clicker, now that they gave in and said clicker last episode. They were avoiding it, so I was avoiding it, but they went ahead and just went and said clicker. But anyways, you could say technically that there's a point of view in like everything that there's character has said, but this they really like take you instead of just showing you a story or telling you a story. But as always, though, it continues the trend to completely take you into their world. Besides the, oh, I hope Riley doesn't die, and are they gonna kiss right now the whole time? Were the like only two things I was like putting in there that was extra. Sometimes I'm looking at the time, seeing like if it's gonna end soon. Sometimes I'm watching something and something happens in the show, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, like I want a snack, or I get up to get something. It's not even that I know what's about to happen. It's like I'm literally like on a video chat or something, and like I have to like leave the room to give him some privacy on the screen for the show. It's almost like I edit to myself, even though I could probably like hear it from wherever. Like on this episode, I was like, oh, this is the only time that happened during the whole season so far. That when Riley came through the window, I was like, for some reason, I needed to go get a Q-tip so I could hear better. But I just didn't want to see the Fedra building anymore. And then that's when About Riley was like about to invite her to the mall or to go out. And very vaguely, she does that too. I like how she did that. Those invites are cool. I didn't think that they were like going on a like hot date or even like a let's see where this goes thing. Just because I always hate that one is like there's like two best friends like of the same gender. They're always gonna be like, oh, like are they like dating or something? Instead of just like, oh well, you just ask that one about the other one because that's how it is, not because like they like got together once or something. It's just kind of like annoying for me to even like see or hear about like indirect. They don't even stop at oh they're like siblings. But I was wrong. I mean, now I'm only like, oh well, there's only like so much room for stuff, so like we kind of only can be like productive or make money with each other now. Otherwise, it's like it's kind of like too inconvenient or like far away. There's like that little grace period where you're like, oh okay, well, I'm still a young person coming up from being a teenager and not a full blown adult paying for like a house or car or something like that. Or even like running your own business. But that's just my rant about friend like things. But just not to sound like a downer, like if you have like a nice little like overlap of a certain place that you all go to, like just stick to that. Just where your like routines like just casually like crossover. Just because of that oldness of being like on your own where it's like, oh well, I'm doing less of whatever I want. But not because I don't get a choice, it's just like easier. Or if you're like hardcore into like something like uh video games or comic books, there's like the old school way of like sticking to your interests and then you'll eventually like see all these people again and keep like developing that taste like you're gonna like be doing it tomorrow or something. Like sometimes you'll have to run your own event, but sometimes like you won't be. And see, just this whole episode just got me like thinking of certain like subject matters and relationships. That's definitely not just for like younger people or older people. Like if you can't even reach out to like your favorite like treat and like express yourself about it, like you may not even want to see that many other people. We all have that one person in the family where it's like kind of dire, but then you realize it's like, oh, well, it kind of doesn't look like whatever they're doing is formulating like uh social behaviors, and yet you're like always like around them or with them eventually, like even later onto your life, just sitting there wondering, and like, am I punishing them for something, like, or am I trying to like convert them? But speaking of converting, we pick up with Ellie, but that's also what I mean by point of view, because it's bring up all this relevant stuff, like you did a search in your mind to apply to the character. And it's that sort of thing you kind of like have a delay on. You're not even like meaning to talk about it, but like you watch the whole thing, probably like very blank minded and just taking in what's like been given to you. And then all of a sudden you're texting your friend, even though you don't usually text them until the weekend, or wanting to personally drop your teenager off and be like, oh, what's your school day been like? Just wanting to add more to the same like sentiment or like mental file that you brought up while watching the show. Although the episode goes up and over, then sometimes like people like drop out at certain points. It's like, yeah, I don't think me and my best friend like kiss like that. So, and it's like, in fact, I don't think that even anyone even thought of that as a possibility. But all that other stuff, it looks like they did a road not taken thing. It wasn't even started to begin with, but just because like some people will be like, oh yeah, I already know what's gonna happen, but they're not the same people that would be like, oh, I want to know how it happens. Because even at the very beginning, it's like we know um, Ellie gets the bite definitely, and she's even like wearing the same clothes from whenever Marlene had her chained up. So it looks like they were playing with a different kind of unexpected thing. But this whole story is like the low part of the demographic of who would be even playing that game. A person that looks like a dad, or a young girl that probably could have a different option of doing anything else. Even if you were like trying to invite someone over, like for a not date and an actual just like game night or something, these two types of people would be not the person you would call, nor would they even like let themselves be like pulled into that world there. Like the Joel person would be like, oh well, I already look like a someone's dad, and that people like look to for like stability, so like I don't want to get the dirty looks like later, like even though I'm probably not gonna say anything about it. Just those like weird expectations, like, and the young girl's like, well, I'm training to be an adult, so that doesn't really like qualify for anything I would want to do or I'm gonna allow myself to do, because that's not the example like I see. And that's kind of what the Quan guy says to Ellie, like when he pulls her in to reprimand her. Like, I know he's an actor, but like they got him because he looks like someone that would do what he just did. Just like I think he's probably a part of the Hawaii 5-0 crew. Unless you're like around like only your parents, eventually like you start reading people's like looks about you and kind of like start from where they expect you to do or be like. And as a psychology buff, never went and got the degree, but I'm a pretty big fan of the subject. That's about like what you would do to build your own actual personality. Sometimes it's not a full conscious thought, you're just like doing it. You like cycle through like the first steps after you notice one or you take one. Then after that, you see what order and combination of which things that you're allowed to do without anyone like questioning it or that someone has done. But then it always sucks because like some people is like, oh, I never ran into someone that's like you, and they're just like kind of like let you be, and they have like no good or bad expectations, so you don't run on anything at all for a while, and then you pick something, and it's like you suddenly like lose sight of certain people. You're just like, what happened? And that's kind of what happened to Riley. She no longer just wants to be some random urges from coming from her body and her only actions to be coming from that. Because she saw everything she was going to be in Fedra, and she did not want to do whatever job that she was going to get. It was like sewage disposal or something like that. But they kind of tie it to the fact that she lost her parents. Like, she seemed like she would have done that and like almost liked it if it was like about the same like character traits in another area of life. But she wanted more versatility than that, than whatever she only experienced at Fedra. She wanted to be chosen more broadly by the group of people that she was working with and for. And maybe if her parents, or definitely really, that they were still there, they would probably be obscuring something like that from Riley, and she would never really ever have to join Firefly. It would maybe be something she considers when she's like mad at Fedra, but it's just a fleeting thought. It would have been pushed away with every more established view of her, which is probably why she came back for Ellie. She usually only had one between her and Ellie, and I'm meaning one of views Bella has of her. So she came to get more of those from her and finalize it before she was ultimately going to go to the Atlanta QZ. And I'm sure there are plenty of views like of them like being kind of like pig-headed or headstrong. I'm not sure. I'm sure headstrong sounds better. Like when they jump off and into the mall and off the electrical generators to flip on the lights. There's that one moment. It's just go in there and do that. And it's like, fine. There were some of those where Ellie had people looking at her like that, and then Riley having those same ones from maybe the same people or about the same type. It's like, oh, friendship. Last episode was kinship. I don't know if they're like going through relationships, but I wouldn't know how to word the first six, but by the seventh one on this episode, it seems to be the most vocal. Maybe it's Shoei. I'm not sure which one to land on completely. And man, it's awesomely hard to backtrack right now. I have to go look at the little cubes for each of the episodes just to remind me. And they're all like looking and like thoughtfully like doing something. Except the Pedro Pascal one for the very first one. He might be the newest person added to the group of friends, it kind of seems like. I've had that look personally myself a few times. had several groups of friends I would jump around with. It feels like I cheated, but uh, I like making these observations like from the things that I can remember. But it looks like Ellie is mostly aware of what Tess represents. And then the Nick Offerman one, if you just look at the episode page, when you click on the more info on The Last of Us, the Nick Offerman one looks like he has something of an observation or something, but no one really knows about it so much. And then the Pedro Pascal one for the fourth episode's kind of funny. If you just kind of like interpret the fact that he's like looking through like that window from that storefront, he's like, I think I got it. But there's like still like all these newspapers like obscuring like everything else. Like as he like went on, like I think I get what our deal is. Like just like as a set and crew, or like what they wanted to convey on the story. And then the Henry one's like, you're on my level now. Yeah. But then like 6, like Maria's like, I get it so well that it doesn't even look like they think I care. I'm like hidden from them. And then Riley finally on the 7th one is like, yeah, this is good. Like she's like saying things about it, but at least before we wouldn't have never known what she's been like saying is good. But as for the friendship thing to the first episode back, I'm sure I'll have to pick up on later. It will seem like a fun discussion later. Oh man, that's so funny. It's almost like an inside joke, but it's like what's been fueling your good mood or whatever mood you like have been in. Like I was broadly looking at each of those like pictures like for the 1 through 7 episodes, and I just like couldn't like break my gaze from their like stares and their like eyes. I hope someday that they at least like see this part. Maybe I'll make it into a short. I know for sure, like they'll get a kick out of that, even though like they might not want to acknowledge it. And I want them to see it like on their own time, because otherwise they probably wouldn't be like in the correct mood. Sometimes people are just working and you're like trying to like get a glimpse of like their personality, and but they're like working, so it's not like completely the same, but they do give you certain things if you've been to like a signing or like a panel. That way, I guess they'll never have to break their own stride for just some rando. It's a good enough discovery for me just to like not even like have to like proudly pronounce that to the world. Well, more importantly to them. But to bring it back to the episode, like with that in mind, it kind of looks like Riley has herself fixated on what's gonna be good to her in so many fashions on different levels. And that's why she grabs Ellie for the 4 wonders of the mall. She paraded her around her friends or people she knows, which technically she did a pass for because, merry-go-round and no one else is there. And it looks like it prep on a photographic level and to see if they're like photogenic together. And looks like that was a thumbs up on that one. And then there was the arcade where she was like, oh, okay. They could get in the zone with each other. That paid off. And it was supposed to be their ultimate debut. It kind of looks like with them dancing on the little platform like they were going to model. But they had those Halloween masks on. And oh man, when Ellie's just like don't go. I was already set on them never kissing, and it's like, oh well, chick, you gotta do it now. Like, it made you like forget about the clicker that was supposed to be like showing up ever since like it that showed them when they were at the or showed us when they were at the photo booth. And just a sidebar on that one, kind of looked like if it's soon enough and like they had breathed in the spores or the spores were like where they were at, does it just like pick up the freshly uh downed body into a clicker? Because at first it looks like it uses it itself as a hive to spread it out or like claim the area, but then it like picks itself up and like goes out like the person in the hallway, but it wasn't like as quickly developed. It might just be something like they're building up to. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're just gonna pretend like they just like regular died, but they were burning the bodies like at the very first episode. And the fireflies and whoever did seem to think it was clear enough for a 17-year-old just to be in there by herself. Just a bunch of like random little people traps. I wonder if that's how Kansas City got rid of their Fedra and just like it's like, okay, well, we're safe from them inside the walls, but if they're inside the walls, they're trapped in there with them. So looks like we'll see on that one. I'm still holding out on Riley being immune as well, and she just had to be separated, or they already took her away. But probably not, sadly. But you know what happens. I think that's probably a good place to stop. Besides the fact that Ellie is now Joel's healer in game terms. Her with her quick wit and pretty gnarly thread and needle skills. The 15 stitches thing just now coming back from the very beginning of the episode to the end. A very nice plot symmetry, in my opinion, where everything was related, but not really. But that was this week's Sleep Atomic for The Last of Us. And tell me what you think about the format. Although I do kind of like just going over the whole plot, like one for one. But I really like how I get to go through everything in a good fashion for me. It seems to tie it together, in my opinion, but we can go back to the other way. But yeah, leave a like, subscribe, a comment, and I'll see you next week for the next Last of Us review. I'll be here regardless, so I hope you're there next time. This has been Alistair, and I'm going to eat. I wonder what it feels like whenever you get stitched up and you're awake. I just want to know how real those screams were. But hey, you look good, and it shows.